Hello and welcome to Silverstone International Circuit, where since 1948 it's been the home of British motorsport and hosted worldwide international series for years of all pedigree. And the history is rich, but today we write a new history. We step into the virtual world with rFactor 2 and our live quest for the world's fastest gamer.
Competitors are fighting for a chance to prove themselves in front of a panel of judges at the McLaren Formula 1 team and become one of their in-house simulator drivers. So this really is a chance of a lifetime.
It's on. It's on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Simulator ready. Stand by for sim driver.
Okay, copy that.
So I'm super excited that McLaren is looking into the virtual world to find our next Formula 1 simulator driver.
No, non ci credo. Già? Già cominciato?
Telemetry data received from Barcelona. We are ready. All systems loaded. F1 team, go ahead with telemetry. Barcelona, go ahead.
Well, without a doubt, it's going to be intense. And yes, here we are in the world-famous wing pit garage at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. It's round one. These very garages, in fact, had that car in front of us, the McLaren Formula 1 here, just a few weeks ago. And although it's in a very different guise, a little more glamorous, I would say, with the 720 behind us as well. Don't let it fool you. We are still as serious as that Grand Prix, arguably, because we are searching for a simulator driver for McLaren, and it starts right now on rFactor.
It's called the world's fastest gamer. That's as simple as that. We've got 20 of the fastest rFactor 2 drivers fighting it out for a place in our final in 3 weeks' time. 5 spots available. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll get 15 drivers into that September final, and then there'll be 5 to qualify. And the winner of that will go through to the finals in November and fight against and prove themselves in front of a massive panel of judges to become that simulator driver. It is a huge, unprecedented prize.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking with Button when this all kicked off at the McLaren headquarters, by the way, I've been there, it's incredible. So to work in that atmosphere, in that environment, I mean, I was scared to leave a fingerprint on the wall.
Yeah.
It is a very beautiful building, top quality tech. Incredible simulator. I wasn't even allowed anywhere near it, but so I'm told, and I imagine it's true. But speaking with Button, it's absolutely, it's a massive role for the team. And as you say, going through to the race week, at that point, okay, winning these races is important. You said the 5 go into that race week. The winner of that moves on to, or sorry, they go into the qualifier for race week. The winner of that moves on. It's not just about being fast at that point, because they need feedback, they need data. It really is a full package deal, and they're looking for someone who can satisfy all that. And while we look for that one person out of our qualifiers, we've actually had 5 others that, based on their pedigree in sim racing and winning various, other games as well, because let's not forget, while we're at rFactor this week, there's all sorts of games involved. They've already been invited through, so we're going to take a quick look at some of the other fastest in the world that are already on the line for McLaren.
I'm top of the world leaderboard across the F1 games on a variety of different tracks. To be part of a team like McLaren in any way, shape or form would be incredible.
I have very, very good experience on the racing video game. I push to do the best lap each time.
Of course it will be amazing to work with a team like McLaren. Competition will be tough, but I'm going to give it everything I have and looking forward to the future.
I played video game first for fun, and now I'm Forza World Champion. I proved myself I can be the best in the world on Forza. No, I would like to prove it to McLaren.
Sometimes it's great to get out of your usual comfort zone. It's going to be a big challenge and a pretty cool opportunity.
Well, a number of names there that if you follow sim racing need no introduction. Gregor Hutu has been a legend in the sim world for years. Bono Huist obviously won the Vegas E-Prix this year with Formula E. And I've actually karted with Aurelian, and I have to say he made me look very slow. Perhaps I am very slow, but it was very impressive how smooth his inputs were in a kart. He was exceptional, and all of those guys really do bring a lot. We've got someone else who's brought a lot to sim racing and real racing. Miguel, you've done a lot over the years to sort of go through a similar situation, maybe not to go obviously into McLaren, but through GT Academy. You've achieved success. What does it kind of entail coming into something like this? And what are these drivers up against now that perhaps they would not have faced before?
Well, they are up to a big pressure. You know, it's a big prize every time that. So usually when they race amongst their friends, so obviously there's still a bit of a pressure. But when you're competing for the prize, you just get that ultimate nervous. So they are trying their best. I'm sure they are all very quick, as we can see on the qualifying as well. And it's a great prize. So and they are all quite quick. So I'm kind of hoping to see how good they will be and how competitive will be the race as well.
They had to qualify to get into the top 20 to race today. I think there was something like 2,000 entrants. So that must be super competitive.
It is actually super competitive, and probably each one of them has done more than 1,000 laps each just to get to that level. Yeah. And I'm sure it's very small margins of time they can improve.
Yeah, well, I think you look at the margin for those 20. I think it was 0.3 that separates the entire grid before the qualifying for this actual race. Keep in mind, the qualifying times we're about to see coming up will be a little bit different, but just to get here was that close. You'll notice, by the way, I skipped your last name. I practiced it all day, and then I got a little stage fright. I think it's Fejska. That's not bad. I should have just gone for it. Again, as someone though who's won this, and you talked about pressure, you know kind of what it means to perform in both real life conditions under pressure, have consistency. We're going to jump into the onboard and the qualifying, which we've got to talk about some of those laps, but speak about driving standards as well, because I think that kind of with pressure could change with some of the inexperienced guys.
Yeah, sometimes the people just tend to get a bit carried away. They might do something that their chimp act and
chimp act,
exactly, and because kind of it's they might think they are on the game and they do something that in real life they shouldn't do.
So we've had qualifying to set the grid for most of our race that we're going to have this afternoon. We've got 5 more spots to sort out with Super Pole coming up. This is from qualifying, so we're going into Copse, second half of the lap now.
Exactly.
Oh, big slide. That's not the way to do it, is it?
Well, it can help the car turn in if it's just a tiny bit, obviously. In how here he's going to Maggots Beckets in Chapel, one of the complex most known on Silverstone, beautiful corners. Obviously on the GT car here, the weight transfer is very important. You don't want to unsettle it too much, otherwise you might have a big off there. But it's a lovely circuit. It has fast corners, slow corners, so you can't quite test your driving capabilities.
And that's perfect, because McLaren wants someone who's good in all conditions naturally. But talk about setup a little bit as well, because they do have some changes they can make on the car.
Exactly. So in here, it's not all just about driving fast. They need to get the best setup so they can consistently drive fast and get that ultimate lap time with that. So they can change stiffness in the car, the suspension, basically everything to get the ideal lap time. Onto the race, they also will control the fuel levels. We don't want anyone to run out of fuel as well. That will be a bit bad, especially if you're leading.
Well, of course, but you want to be as light as always. It's always that battle in racing. And just to reiterate, Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, obviously 650S GT3, the FIA homologation GT3 that all of these drivers are in, which means, Ben, and just quickly before though, I want to mention we are online, and online is interactive. You can interact with us. I will, at the end of the show, take some tweets, some questions that you all may have. You can do so on Twitter, #WFG. But as I was saying, as all the drivers are in the same car, that puts a lot of pressure on qualifying. And you have double duties, much like Miguel, who also, by the way, is one of the race stewards. You're not only on the coach.
He's very important.
Exactly. Not only are you on the coach with me, you're taking over commentary duties as well.
Yes, absolutely. So we've already had qualifying. That's happened, and the top 5 are qualifying into Super Pole. I'm doing the commentary alongside sim racing expert Scott Woodwiss.
Hello.
Good to see you.
And you.
Over there, by the way, we've got Race Control themselves and the TV gallery. So, Scott, we need to get into the Super Pole. Who have we got, the 5 drivers?
We have. It was actually a very last-minute gasp for times as you'd expect in the qualifying session, but as it was fantastic to see. We have currently out on now 5th quickest, which was Miguel Ballester, but also we have the top 5 in order, where Nikodem Wisniewski, Enzo Benito, Rudy Van Buren, Hani Al-Sabdi and Miguel Ballester. And the time was set by just 0.2 per second. 2 drivers going under 1:57. Quicker than Enzo Benito's time. Wisniewski 56.8, 56.9 for Benito. So the pace is upped from the qualifying times.
Right, okay, so Super Pole coming up in just a few moments' time. Back to you, Matt.
Indeed, Super Pole is about to start. 3/10 divided all 20 drivers to get into this race. So imagine how important it is to have pole position for just 30 minutes when everyone is in the same car. This is almost as important as the race itself.
So, starting the lap then is Ballester, the 5th qualifier, Miguel Ballester, and he goes into the first corner then. And let's have a look at how the car is behaving through the newer section of this Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. The car looks pretty good for the moment. Miguel Ballester's time has obviously been reset. The significance of the 56-second lap is that when we had the time trials to qualify into this race, nobody went into the 56s. So getting into the 56s is particularly good. Only, what did you say, 2 or 3 guys have done that?
Yeah, in the qualifying session, there were a few did it in practice, got into higher down to 56.7, so they're really getting on the pace, and that would mean an improvement in time between when the time trials ended, the qualifying stage ended, and when we actually came here to set the qualifying times. They've found about an extra 2 or 3 tenths so far. First sector of Miguel Ballester on his flying lap 32.7. As he makes his way down the heritage pitch towards the ultra-fast Copse corner. He'll flick it down a couple of gears and pitch it right through the long right-hander. And up to a very, very high-speed section, Maggots, Beckes and Chapel, which is not to be taken lightly here. You sweep through here with so much pace, flick down a couple of gears and really attack it as Miguel flies through. And look at how much pace and how much grip the car's got. Big slide through the apex of Maggots, but he holds it under control. And now it's the long drag down the back straight towards Stowe Corner.
Okay, so sector 1 then, a 32.7, about to break the beam for the second sector of the lap. As I say, he qualified 5th during the qualifying session, so he's the first car on track for this Super Pole session. And if you watch things like Formula E, you'll be familiar with the Super Pole top 5, 1 lap, who can get on the pole position. A 51.7 in sector 2 is pretty good. Miguel Ballester was not one of the guys to dip into the 56s in the 15-minute qualifying session that we've just seen. Big slide through the Maggots and Beckett section of the lap. Now through the final corner of the lap. 4 wheels just off, but that's okay because at least one is on the curb, and he registered a time of 57.4, and that's not quite as good as he did in the qualifying itself. They are running a little bit more fuel than they would have done previously, and well, the track is it's no greener because the circuit has rubbered up through the qualifying session.
It has, yeah. So effectively, they'll be laying rubber down as we see Hani Al-Sabti on his qualifying lap now, trying to match the first sector up through the arena section. But yes, of course, as more lap times go through, these guys will be looking to try and improve and using that rubber to their advantage because, of course, the more rubber that goes down, the grippier the circuit is and the quicker they'll be able to go on their lap as Al-Sabti heads towards the end of the first sector.
And significantly, if you are a fan of real racing, the sim racing equivalent simulates exactly the same weather conditions. So it's 29 degrees track and ambient temperature, and the rubber is being laid down lap after lap. 15-minute qualifying session, and now they are benefiting from that rubber on this Super Pole session, and the track, of course, will develop throughout the race as the fuel also drops down.
It does. Al-Sabti showing he's really cutting. He actually took one of the corner markers out through Woodcote as he charges into Copse Corner on his lap. It was a 32.2 for his first sector. as he just about keeps it off the line and heads down towards Magnus and Beckett's. And the key is going to be seeing whether or not he can beat the 51-second sector time which Ballester set in his run as he heads through the complex.
Yeah, aiming for a 51.7 through this second sector. Got to get through these tricky Maggotts and Beckett's turns. The car looks very tidy, but sometimes tidy isn't as fast as you'd like. Breaks the beam for sector 2 then. It's a 51.8, so he's just a fraction behind Miguel Ballester. Can he find anything through the final sector, through Stowe, through Vale and through Club? Some of the corners that have stayed very similar over the 50-60 years that Silverstone has existed as a real race circuit, and this rFactor 2 simulation is bang on. Every single bump that exists on the real track exists on this simulation as well. rFactor, one of the best simulations, and forms the basis to many of the Formula 1 simulators for real.
It does, as Al-Sabti heads himself across the line. His time as he comes across through is 58.1. He lost a lot of time in the final sector by the looks of things, Ben, so it's pretty key. But as we said, this is such a good simulation that the pro version of rFactor 2 is used by just about all the F1 teams that have a simulator. So it's that higher standard, and it's really a high quality simulator. As we see car number 3, Rudy Van Buren, third quickest number of times, about to start his Super Pole lap.
Rudy Van Buren then. He will be through the first corner now and into this new section, flowing section, as we heard from Miguel. Very difficult to control the balance and the weight of a GT3 car. On board now, let's go on board. Bundles of lock as he goes through Abbey, that tight left-hand turn. Now opens up the throttle, opens up the steering, and onto the Wellington straight. We've got the telemetry in front of you. You can see what's going on with the steering. He's aiming for that 51.7 that was set by Miguel Ballester, and it's a 32.4, so it's not particularly good at the moment, and it's looking very squirrely through this slower speed section as well. Of course, fresh tyres, they would have needed to really work hard on their outlap to get those tyres working and biting for this fast lap.
Yeah, and it's key to get them up to temperature. Yeah, they've had about a lap of the circuit on his outlap to get as much temperature into them as possible. As he heads back up towards Copse again. And again, he's got to try and find that 51.7 to beat. He takes a fair amount of run through here, very wide on the exit of Copse. He's got to be careful that he doesn't raise the eye of the stewards with that move, and just right on board here as we head through Magnus and Beckett's. Take a lot of curb as he sweeps through the right-hander, and then back down to fourth gear. Punch down to third, he should do for the last part, up towards Chapel, and back on the power nice and early, letting the car drift out to the exit, back onto the back straight through Chapel, onto the hanger straight there. And this should be a key run up towards the timing beam, and that's a mega second sector, 51.4. Rudy Van Buren on an absolute fly here.
Absolutely, really, really good, and great to see the work that he's doing at the wheel. He's actually using quite a lot more lock than you'd expect to see in the equivalent run. Super wide through Stowe, all four wheels off the circuit, and that may well be a thrown out lap. Very, very wide indeed. We saw a couple of laps in practice being set with that super wide line, and it is faster, but it's certainly not legal in terms of the race stewarding, both virtual and also real, with Miguel sitting there in race control. He does go fastest with a 57.242. It's super quick, but will it be allowed?
Not quite sure, as we see Enzo Benita. He was the man that finished the qualifying trials fastest with a 57.004. He has since gone quickest. He headed into the Super Pole with a 56.9, but he has gone quicker than that, so it shows us that there is enough pace to go quicker, and bit of a slide that will slow him down up towards the arena section through Farm Corner as he winds it around through Village into the loop. And Benito already losing time. He's going to have to put a heck of an effort in to try and catch up that time he's lost through Farm Corner already.
It's interesting to see how the cars are reacting with that first corner. Abbey super fast, knock it down one gear, and then not having the temperature in the rear tyres, and the rear is getting away and just sliding out just a little bit. Now coming down to Brooklands, it's a 32.2, so it is a good first sector for Benito. Looks very tidy through Luffield now. It's a super frustrating corner because you have to wait to get on the throttle. Understeer kicks in massively if you get on too early, and then oversteer on the exit as the track falls away. Now onto more familiar ground, onto the old start finish straight, the legendary Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone. Super fast Copse. Nasty little bump on the apex, but gets away with it. Very good line through there, and this is looking fantastic from Benito.
Been a very clean lap so far. Looks like he cut the corner a little bit through Magnus and Beckett's, running that wider line into the entry for Maggotts that Van Buren took, and Van Buren just finishing his outlap as he heads down, so he's not going to get in front and hold up Benito too much. Onto the backstraight, what's his second section as he comes through the line? 51.4. It's a very strong lap again. So this is going to be very strong indeed. And I reckon possibly he could be on a challenge here to potentially take away the provisional pole of 157.2. Could possibly be a very low 157. He can find a couple more tenths.
Enzo Benito from Italy rounding through the last couple of corners. He goes wide again. Oh, and this could again be a lap that's thrown out for the Italian. It's been so good through most of the lap, but wide through Stowe and again wide through Vale as well. Just about keeps the car 4 wheels on the circuit. He cuts the beam and it's going to be a 1:57.566. That is the fastest time that we've seen, bar Rudy Van Buren. He slots, according to my timing screens, into 3rd position. And we have one more car then. Nikodem Wisniewski, Polish driver. And amazing to see 12 different nationalities in this 20 finalist race for the rFactor 2 round 1 this week. We expect to see similar drivers, if they do not qualify this week, into next week and the week after, all taking as many chances as possible to try and get in to become the world's fastest gamer and recognised by McLaren Formula 1 team. The McLaren 650S, by the way, only released 2 weeks ago, so they've only had a very finite amount of time to find a decent setup in rFactor 2, and Sector 1 is a 32.149. It's the fastest we've seen anybody through that first sector, but it's important for Kim to keep it super clean, especially for that 3rd sector of the lap.
It's going to be very crucial indeed, of course. Copse can make or break a lap as he heads past the old pits and down towards the right-hander at Copse. Punch it down 1 gear, looks for the apex. How much curb does he take on the exit? It's enough. And now towards Magnussen Beckett. You've seen a couple of drivers already cutting way across the curve here. We'll follow the racing line where it's at its darkest. Beckett throws it into Maggot. So much apex speed. Nikodem Wisniewski is absolutely on it here. He is charging on this lap. A little bit of an oversteer moment through the exit of Chapel. And onto the back straight. Look at the 2nd sector as he comes to cut the beam. It's a 51.6.
Yeah. This looks absolutely fantastic. You could see the placement of the car and the way it was rotating looked absolutely brilliant. This is the crucial corner though. Can he keep it all 4 wheels on? He may well have seen what the others have done. He may well have seen them run a little bit wide, and he does the same thing as well, 4 wheels off. But are we going to see those times taken away or not? Either way, it's super good. Massive amounts of curb though through the slower section, through the final 2 corners. And now accelerating towards the line. What's it going to be? Is it in the 56s? I don't think so, but it's going to be a 57.447. Slots himself into 3rd position there. Rudy Van Buren on provisional pole. Miguel Balesta 2nd. Nikodem Wisniewski in 3rd. Enzo Benito only 4th after provisional pole after qualifying. And Hani Al Sabti not having a very good lap, but still will start the race, the 30-minute sprint race, in 5th position. It's Rudy Van Buren on the pole position.
All right, well, that was an exceptional qualifying. 1 lap, and we're still multiple drivers within 10. Scott, I'm going to get you to come on over and join us. As we've had Ben here before. We've had enough of Ben for a little bit of time. And you yourself, just to give you a bit of an introduction, have been involved with a lot of these guys over a multitude of different simulators for a while. What did you make of that Super Pole qualifying?
It's very interesting, and I wouldn't have expected any lesser standard of racing than we got so far, qualifying I should say, and Rudy Van Buren with that provisional pole time. A bit surprised by Hani Al Sabti though, very messy lap for him, only put in 5th, and a lot of drivers taking a lot of wide curbs. I'm not sure what the stewards will make of that. But,
well, that's a talking point that I wanted to bring up, because I heard you guys mention it. I was watching the laps, obviously Van Buren sits on pole, and obviously coming out of Stowe is 4 wheels off, but unlike in real life where there's a bit of a debate often about track limits and there's sensors in the cars that sometimes are inconsistent, it's built into the game. So in theory, if the game's not giving it to them, it's going to be 100% accurate based on its own physics and its own sensor. It's got to be fair game, is it not?
Well, it's down to own interpretation, I suppose, but effectively, if the sim is saying that it's a valid lap and it's what I believe was in the limits, then it will give it. So it's just a case of how far these guys are willing to push the limit. And trust me, in practice and qualifying, they will have tested that limit and gone see, well, just how far can I push it before it gives them the warning to saying your lap's been cut, the lap's not going to count. So it's pretty intriguing, but compared to where we were in practice and qualifying with the times what we had in qualifying, it was always going to be a little bit slower because of the fact they had an extra lap of fuel in them. But even so, pretty close at the front, and with a couple of drivers a little bit out of position from what I felt compared to where they were in the qualifying trials. It's going to be interesting to say the least and see what happens in this 30 minutes.
Benito came into this. Enzo Benito is one of the absolute favourites. Was first in the qualifier to make it into this race. I think he was first in the qualifier leading into the Super Pole as well. You talked about that extra weight. We saw a little bit of oversteer on it through Abbey from him heading into the first complex out of the first sector. Warming up rear tires factor in this game, obviously, and over 16 laps, that's going to be an even bigger issue, but it certainly costed him, I think, with that weight.
It did. I think what it was simply because some drivers would be really pushing to try and get that lap. It's just that moment when you think you've got enough grip, and it really is sod's law, where you can get one point where you go through that corner, thousands of times, and just the one point where you really need it is that moment that you just turn a little bit too much or run a little bit too wide, and that's the point which really loses you that crucial time. And it's that time when you don't want it, and that's the point where these guys have to cope under pressure, where they can run that corner as they've done thousands and thousands of times under the pressure of knowing that it's one lap, it's one shot to get pole position, and if you don't get it right, it screws it out completely and your chance is gone.
Yeah, and therein lies the pressure we talked about a little bit with Miguel, who's obviously gone through GT Academy and done some Blancpain GT in the past with Nissan. So stuff involved there that maybe they've not seen in terms of the Super Pole and how much this matters. But again, it's a 30-minute race. These guys are all starting near the front in the top 5 with that. Was there any name that you kind of expected perhaps should have been the Super Pole that didn't have a good qualifying leading into it, or someone that you're perhaps a little bit expecting more from than not seeing them in that session?
There was a couple. I mean, I was surprised to see Atsi Kirker wasn't up there because he was one of the drivers, as I said, but which managed to get themselves a sub 1 minute 57 lap time. Peter Burlack as well, who also was going really quickly in as well. Graham Carroll was another guy. He's no stranger. He's been someone who has been part of the Visa Vegas E-race, and he was one of the finalists there and was constantly winning the qualifying races. And he was down in the times, but managed to find a lot in the days between when qualifying ended and when we came to qualifying today. So there was a few drivers I expected a little bit more of, and a couple of drivers, particularly Ballester, sort of really upped his game and put himself onto the front row of the grid, so he's one to watch. But as we know, qualifying is one thing and racing is another, and the crucial thing is that it's all well good being quick over a single lap, but you've now got to string it together and have the right racecraft to pick your way through the field if you have to, but to be able to run 16 laps at the kind of pace you need to win this race. And of course that's, again, easier said than done, but there's a reason why these guys are the best in the world, there's a reason why they're in the top 20, and so this is going to be intense.
Yeah, well, and certainly the qualifying pace and running wide and hitting so many curbs and seeing a lot of, the oversteer in the early parts, that's going to hurt tires and hinder tires. Again, the model in this game is very, very accurate. We're going to take a look at the back half of the pole lap from Van Buren. This should, I think, include Stowe if we're, far enough back, so we will. In fact, we're going to see all the way into Stowe. And I want to talk specifically about more or less the wide curbing that he was taking and carrying so much speed, and whether it's controversial or not.
Yeah, so just charging his way into Magnus Beckett's and Chapel, and this is a really crucial part of the circuit in terms of how much speed you can carry through here, and just you're constantly flicking down a gear or two as you head through. But it's this part right here, if you can get a super enough run off of Chapel onto the back straight here, this is the key part, and then down towards Stowe. It's a long, long corner, and if, again, we saw at least with guys like Enzo Benito, if you just go a little bit too wide, it can really hamper you, but really someone who can really string it together on a lap.
And here's the part that was discussed, got a little bit of oversteer, sent himself well wide, even 2 wheels off of the AstroTurf on the outside of the curbing, but carried so much speed as a result of it. And we saw Benito, he was another one that carried a lot of speed going in through that section and had very good braking, late braking, getting wide as well. So it's going to be interesting in the race to see who carries that line, who doesn't, who's able to snip up the inside perhaps with a later apex. You mentioned the racing, and I think if it's this close, line choice is going to be crucial for defence.
Yeah, but the thing is, of course, these guys have got to know, they've got to be able to display an adept level of racecraft, because effectively, the race stewards are going to be looking on this very, very carefully. Miguel and Ed, we have looking at our race stewards, they're going to be really strict. They're not going to, pull any punches. These guys are going to basically go straight down the line and saying, if you're contradicting the rules, we're going to go, basically, we're going to throw the book at you, basically. So because this is McLaren we're talking about, this is serious stuff. For some people, they've even said outright, this is the biggest sim race in their lives, or at least at the moment, at least. Of course, it could be even bigger as we get to the finals. But, this is one point where it's going to be really crucial.
I think that's absolutely true, and it's already looking like it's going to be very challenging, very, very close and competitive. We're moments away from jumping into the race, the first race, our week 1 of qualifying in rFactor 2.
On the pole position then, Rudy Van Buren, and alongside him, Nikodem Wisniewski. That will be the front row of the grid. Enzo Benito on row 2 with Hani Al-Sabti alongside him. Miguel Ballester demoted from 2nd to 5th after not completing a slowing down lap. And then the grid that was set from qualifying. Atsi Kirchhoff with Graham Carroll alongside. Cheng Buk Bassi in 8th position. Martin Stemico in 9th. And Paolo Mura in 10th position. The cars are lined up and we are racing here.
It's a formation lap.
Start from the front row. It's a formation lap, so Ballester's gone a little bit, he got a bit excited there and jumped a few positions. I think some cars had a little bit of damage there because I think Ballester thought that was the race and he went and collided with somebody else. They can't reset the cars now because that would be a DNF.
Yeah, that's very
Ballester
true.
to drop to the back of the field.
It's going to be pretty issue. It's just been told
Ballester will be starting from the back of the field.
Miguel Ballester is being told to start from the back of the field because of his antics. So this is crucial. This is the real point where you can't crack under pressure, and unfortunately Miguel seriously has. And this is surprising for somebody who, of course, has come through GT Academy with all that sort of pressure, and he's fallen at the first hurdle in the race, jumping the start, and because of that, misjudging it, making contact, and because of that, as we said, the stewards are not going to take things lightly. If you mess up in this race, you're going to get a severe penalty straight away. So they're straight on that. And credit to the stewards for throwing the book at him for that one, because he's going straight to the back, and now he's got all that work to do in the next 30 minutes.
And it's very, very crucial to emphasise that we have a full race control setup here alongside us in our world's fastest gamer studio. We have a driver steward, you've met him already, Miguel, and we have also a race director in Ed, and they are in control of what is happening on screen. So they're telling the drivers what to do, where to be, and if they break those rules, as we've already seen twice, in fact, by Miguel Ballester, then they will be punished. Miguel Ballester did not complete a slowing down lap after his Superpole lap, therefore was demoted to 5th, and he's basically overtaken under a yellow flag formation lap situation, and therefore he's now been demoted to the back of the field. And notice, if our timing screens are correct, he hasn't actually quite made it back to that point yet. He's still got quite a long way to go. Everyone else kind of getting back into formation, and this is an opportunity to warm everything up, tyres and brakes, and get those cars prepared for a 30-minute race. We've got 12 different nations taking part, from Italy, Poland, and even an Iraqi, Hani Al-Sabti, originally from Iraq and Baghdad, Czech Republic, Republic of Ireland, Turkey, a couple of Brits, and Spain as well. Lots of different nations racing at home, or some of them are racing maybe not at home but at university or whatever, and they're all coming together and racing for this coveted prize around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. We are here at Silverstone, but they are around the world. And this is what I love about online gaming. This is what I love about sim racing. The opportunity to bring everybody together without needing to jump on a plane.
Miguel Ballester to drop to the back of the field and risk disqualification.
Now for the third time, Miguel Ballester has actually been told that he has to go to the back of the grid, otherwise he will face disqualification. So he must drop back, otherwise this could be his chance to get through this first round before it's even started.
And Miguel Ballester then is the orange machine that is slowly backing off, and the others can hear the message because the others are trying to get past him. But as we watch them coming through Stowe, he's not yet at the back of the field, and he needs to put the brakes on if he's going to get to the back of the field before we get to the start line.
Yeah, he's going to have to just move out wide and go wide out onto the AstroTurf to try and let somebody through, because this is going to hold up the start procedure, and he is going to face disqualification. He's gone back through the order, but hasn't gone back far enough, so I fear possibly his race could be over again before it's even started as the field makes its way up towards the end of the formation lap.
Rudy Van Buren on the right-hand side, with Wisniewski on the left-hand side in the white car, and then behind him Bonito also in a white machine. Those are the front three. Graham Carroll in that very, very garish pink machine behind. Quite a famous racer from Scotland, from Edinburgh. We've seen him in the Formula E competition at the start of this year. And now green flag. A bit of debris already on the track from the start of the warm-up lap. It's a rolling start, and off we go then. I don't think Ballester got all the way to the back. It's Rudy Van Buren who takes the lead, and that's Bonito, I think, has run super wide. It's not even on the screen. There he is, Bonito, right at the back of the field after making a mistake from third position and the fastest qualifier. That is a big, dramatic situation already, and Graham Carroll also getting involved with another spinner further back. and that is Morales. So Miguel Morales also at the back of the field. A little bit of argy-bargy through those first corners, I guess, as you'd expect.
Yeah, very frantic first few laps as already out to Van Buren leading, Wisniewski in second place, Al Sabti holding on to third, Carroll's got fourth, Atse Kirchhoff in fifth, and then Cem Bullock-Bashi into sixth position. Lee Morris with a good start from 11th place up to 7th as they wind their way out of Luffield and through Woodcote for the first time. Buren has the advantage then, he's now forcing everyone to go with his pace up through Woodcote for the first time, and I wonder now if he's going to start to try and pull away. They're throwing corner markers at Woodcote everywhere.
You see that every weekend if you come racing at Silverstone and watch Silverstone in the national circuit. They like to get rid of them quite quickly, and I get rid of them in the first lap.
Disqualification for Ballester.
And Ballester has been disqualified for not dropping back, so he's going to have to start the process again. There is another 3 opportunities to qualify into that super final, the interview situation of the world's fastest gamer in November, next week, the week after, and then the kind of final in September. And Ballester is going to have to go through that whole process, set a trial time, get into the top 20, and then we'll probably see him back here next Sunday. Remember, and then leading the race, looking in control ahead of Wisniewski, then Al Sabi, Carroll, Kirchhoff, Bullock-Bashi, Morris, Stefenko and Patel, with Francisco Lopez, the 10th position driver. And for the moment, everyone looking pretty well behaved, you have to say, after that argy-bargy in the first couple of corners. A little bit of challenging just on the outside of the top 10 between Patel and Lopez, and a black machine behind him, and that is Kevin Ryan. So watch just on the fringes of the top 10 then. Patel, Lopez and Ryan looking pretty racy and pretty much locked together.
This is where we separate the qualifiers from the races. Across the line, the gap between the pair of them was... I haven't got gaps on my screen there for a moment, but I was looking as they come through the complex now for the second time. Van Buren's got it pretty much under control at the moment. If a tighter line, Wisniewski, that could put him under pressure from Al Sabti as they head on to the Wellington Straight for the second time. Still got Carroll in 4th position. 5th place is Kirkhoff, but he's got to be careful because both behind him, he's going to have Cem Bullock-Bashi and Lee Morris, and they're on the fringes of the top 5. And if they can start to possibly try and work together, they could maybe make a pass to get past the pair of them. Martin Stefanko also up the mix in 8th spot, and some drivers that qualified down the order taking full advantage of the fact that it gets a bit chaotic in the first couple of laps, but of course once they start to settle down into a rhythm, it could be pretty cool. Now I'm just going to watch Graham Carroll because he's starting to get onto the back in 4th position of 3rd place Hani Al Sabti. This is the Walter Hayes Trophy winner, of course. Graham Carroll, of course, is no stranger to the Silverstone circuit because he's won the Walter Hayes Trophy, which is a big Formula Ford race on the national circuit, and he did it a couple of years ago, I think, in the pouring rain. So he knows the circuit all too well. He's chasing Hani Al Sabti, who, of course, was one of the GT Academy regional winners back a couple of years ago. So, again, it's a circuit that he knows all too well as well.
Absolutely amazing stats from the qualifiers to get into this top 20. 1,213 entrants just to get into this top 20, and 163,000 laps were turned, which is about 500,000 miles to qualify to get into this particular Silverstone Grand Prix qualifier. Next week is Zandvoort. The week after that we come back to Silverstone on a different layout, the International, and then the final, which 15 of the qualifiers from those 3 weeks plus 5 extra qualifiers will compete on the national circuit. There's only 3.5 corners, and there's only about a minute lap, so that's going to be absolutely fascinating to see. And make sure you stay tuned through the whole of August, each week on Sunday, same time, same place. Some entertaining, super entertaining sim racing. And for the moment, it's all looking very settled. Everyone's looking very calm, but they know that they've got a long race ahead of them. And also, these are spec machines, and these are the world's fastest gamers. So the lap times are within a tenth of each other every single lap. The consistency is amazing, and that, Scott, is what the guys in McLaren are looking for. They want some sim racer to sit in their Formula 1 car, their sim Formula 1 car, and turn hundreds and hundreds of laps with different setups and give feedback. And that is what will be looked out for when these races are being held, and the judging panel will be watching these races and working out who looks good and who doesn't.
And some people may think that, turning hundreds of laps in that might be quite monotonous, but at the same time, you think about what's at stake here, effectively, and some people think that's the best job in the world. So that's what they're all fighting for. And then Wisniewski was a little wide on the exit of Luffield Corner through Woodcote. We've got to have a straggler at the back of the field, which is Paolo Moya in 18th place. He's right down the back of the order. We've lost Enzo Benito as well, so whatever damage he sustained on that first corner incident has really hampered him, which means he'll have to go back to the drawing board and qualify for Zandvoort. As we just continue watching Graham Carroll, he's just keeping Hani Al Sabti in his sights. and keeping a steady gap to behind him at Kirkhope with 5th. A little wide on the run through Chapel on the insides. They come onto the back straight now. This is on the 3rd time of asking, and still Van Buren holds this very key lead. Everyone just charging down towards Stowe Corner, just moving to the left-hand side of the track to pitch it right. And we've got had a yellow flag in sector 2 just briefly, but that's now just quickly been withdrawn. And they're not afraid of taking the wide line, are they, on the exit of Stowe?
And let's just clarify for those who may be being educated in sim racing. Enzo Benito was the fastest qualifier. He was number 1 at the top of the list from the time trial to get into this race. He was the fastest qualifier during qualifying. Maybe slightly made a little error in the super pole, but he should be at the front of the field. He shouldn't be quitting after 2 laps, but that mistake at the very first corner has super cost him. Just kind of contextualise who Enzo Benito is as a sim racer.
Yeah, Enzo Benito has quite a lot of experience. I'm going to try and find my info sheet here to try and run through some of his experience. But Enzo himself has been someone who's been around quite a lot in several different leagues. He's raced in the likes of Touring Pro Series and Formula Sim Racing. He's done quite a lot in that basis, as I'm continuing to sweep through my rafts of different information sheets here, all the different drivers. But even so, as they head back down towards the complex, I'll just keep tabs on what's going on for 3rd place.
Yeah, we've lost Paulo Mua as well. He's DNF'd, so we've lost a 3rd car. And obviously, if you do have a big error, they know that the guys at the very, very front in the top 5 are unlikely to make errors. So if you do drop half a minute back, there's no point continuing, and that's game done. You do also sustain damage, so the car may not be as functional as before, and therefore you won't get the same performance, and it's game over. So another man, Paulo Moura, to look out for next week, who will try and re-qualify and come in and try and get into that kind of final in September.
Going back to Enzo Benito, just to see what level that he's at, effectively, because he's going for this McLaren simulator job, but in actual fact, he already has a simulator job because he's passed the Cheetah Formula E team. He's their official simulator driver, so someone who already is at the level where they can be a simulator driver already. That possibly could be an attractive prospect if he can make it that far to the finals, of course, at the McLaren Technology Centre in November, to decide what's going on, because he has the experience in the role that they're looking for. It's pretty key. But he was the finalist in GT Academy in Italy. He was the overall champion in the iRacing GT3 series. He's had several World Championship podiums in the iRacing Championship, and he was 4th overall in the Visa Vegas E-Race. So he's got a lot of experience on both rFactor 2 and also even iRacing as well. So, and that's the key point in this one, in terms of the world's fastest game, in my personal view, is someone who can come from maybe, racing on the console like an Xbox or a PlayStation, who can race on the likes of Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport, and then come on to rFactor 2 or a PC sim like iRacing or something along those lines. And it might take them a tiny amount of time to get used to it, but once the setup's there, to be able to go out there and be the quickest man on track, and to be able to put in those quick laps and earn success and earn the right to do well. So that's a key point to what McLaren are looking for. Someone who's not just quick on one platform, but across all platforms, across a wide spectrum of racing games and simulators.
So let's just clarify again. The top 5 drivers will go into the final in September. Then next week another 5. Then the following another 5. So that's 15 in that final. But there then are 5 kind of wild card places to get into that final in September. So they get a grid of 20 drivers around the national circuit, and the winner, only the winner, will go through and have the interview at the McLaren Technology Centre alongside some of the guys we've already seen and learnt about who have been selected by McLaren. Let's jump on board now a little bit further back in the pack. Let's go to Kevin Ryan, who's in 11th position, who's been looking racy the last couple of laps, and he's staring at the back of Francisco Lopez, trying to find a way past. Lopez running a little bit wide, running 4 wheels off the circuit, and that is kind of perhaps a pressure that Francisco Lopez is finding, missing the apex, running wide, and that's what Kevin Ryan wants to see.
Yeah, and it's pretty crucial that you can't get distracted by what's going on in front of you. You have to drive the track, not according to what the guy in front is doing. Of course, you have to pay attention to what's going on in front, but effectively, you've got to drive the track. You've got to race the track yourself. Look at what's going on, race your lines, race your corners, and just run about your race plan, and just let the race come to you, and obviously take what's happening in front of you as it comes. So effectively, if something happens in front, assess it as you can, as all sorts going on in front as well.
Yeah, I think we may have had a change for position. There's battling going on further back, but I think we might have a change position between Graham Carroll and Hani Al-Sabti, because Graham Carroll is now registered in 4th position, Al-Sabti in 3rd. That must have changed at some point, but then it changed back again. So they've been battling. It's been very, very close, and now Graham Carroll looks to have fallen into the clutches of Kirchhoff. But if you're in the top 5, do you fight? You're qualified, so there's no point in pushing yourself further forward and perhaps compromising the top 5 position, because you will go through to that final in September.
You can, but at the same time, there's no room for complacency. So yes, Rudy Van Buren might be leading, but there's no reason to let up his pace. He has to keep on pushing as hard as he can, because he knows that, again, as we've seen with some drivers here, one small slip-up is incredibly crucial. If you make a small mistake, especially when you're someone like Van Buren or Wisniewski in front, you know that you've got Al Sabti, you've got Carroll, you've got Kirchhoff. They're going to be there snapping at your heels. They will smell blood, and they will go for you if they get a chance. So yes, these two might be pulling away, but it can all be taken from them literally with a snap of the fingers. It can be done just like that. So they've got to keep on racking up the consistent race laps, keeping the advantage, and just holding on to the position.
So behind Kirchhoff, who is in 5th position, is Cem Bullock-Bashi, and there's a small gap between Kirchhoff and Bullock-Bashi. It's about 2 seconds at the moment, and so he's the first of our non-qualifiers, if you like. He needs to push, he needs to find something, but he's in attendance. A good couple of drivers, Lee Morris behind him, Martin Stefanik, Mohamed Patel, and then Francisco Lopez a little further back. So a little group there of 4 cars who are yet to qualify, who will have to do it again if they can't get into the top 5 for the moment. And that, I guess, that's where the real pressure is. The red, the turquoise blue machine, the grey machine, and then the orange McLaren 650 SGT3 car. And again, just to emphasise, they've only had 2 weeks to get used to this car, to set this car up. They may know rFactor 2 very well, these drivers. They may have also transferred from other platforms like iRacing, but this car is only 2 weeks old, only been available for 2 weeks, and therefore only 2 weeks chance to get a decent setup. Not just here, because if they fail to qualify here, they need a setup for Zandvoort next week, and they need a setup for the international or the national circuit the weeks after.
And one thing to keep in mind is that someone who's quicker here at Silverstone, there's no guarantee they're going to be quick at Zandvoort. So someone who may have struggled here on this circuit is going to then go to the sweeps and undulations of Zandvoort, and they may go even faster. Oh, yeah, we contact in the background. That was Fran Lopez. Maybe get a replay of that on the screen, but I'll try and rewind it myself on our screens.
Yeah, he was turned around by Kevin Ryan, I believe. They were scrapping through the new section lap. Ryan went down the inside and just tapped Lopez into a spin. Lopez can be furious with that. It was looking fiery, and Ryan was looking very, very good, but Lopez now has dropped down to 14th position.
And also one driver that's just behind him, I'm surprised to be so far down, Peter Burlack, only down in 15th, and also the guy in front of him, Jack Keithley. These are superb races, guys, who really know how to properly race if the car goes to them. But they're way down the order, and I have to say, I'm not disappointed, but I'm just very surprised that they're not on the same pace as the guys before when they put such great efforts in through practice and through the qualifying week. And they're way down the order, which means they're going to have to go back to the drawing board for the next round at Zandvoort, rethink, try and get a good setup, and try and get a little bit further up the order if it's possible. But struggling here at Silverstone in this first round.
Yeah, so for those people who qualified, the top 20 qualifiers, obviously that was over 1 lap, that wasn't racing. Enzo Benito, we've seen retire. He was the fastest person through the time trial over the course of the week. Atzi Kirchhoff is still in the mix. Nico Wisniewski is in 2nd position. Hani Al Sabti is in 3rd position. Paolo Mia, we've lost. And then Peter Burlack, as you say, he's down in 15th position. And Peter, massive amounts of experience.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch on Rudy Van Buren, actually, who's currently got a relatively comfortable lead. In fact, he's got quite a substantial gap in the lead right now, but his experience goes back to some 2008. I mean, bear in mind that he's actually 25 years old. 2008, he's roughly at 15, 16. He had some notable success in sims
position back
like
to Lopez.
LFS, as just heard Kevin Ryan's been told to give the position back to Fran Lopez. That will mean that Kevin Ryan has to compromise his own race and drop back a few positions in order to get through to let him back through again.
Yeah, so let's have a look at that, because poor Kevin Ryan is now in 10th position, but Francisco Lopez is only 14th, so he's going to have to effectively pull over and park it for a couple of sections of the turns. And yes, indeed, that's exactly what he does. He pulls over to the left-hand side, slows down, has a look to see where Francisco Lopez is, and presumably as he gets into the mirrors, starts to speed up, which he does, and here comes Lopez around the outside, but he's going to lose the position to Burlack, who goes round the outside through Brooklands and then dives down the inside at Luffield, and that's what we're going to see in the national finals, those moves every single day of the week, because that's one of the 3 corners they have on the national circuit. So Ryan doesn't just drop back to 14th position, he actually drops down to 15th behind Peter Burlack, and now a little fight ensues.
Yeah, he's not finished just yet. They head through Cops Corner. Also, got to be very careful. This is going to be a very feisty Samuel Lebert and Miguel Morales. They're going to use that for a bit of incentive. I think Morales is trying to get a run on Lebert up towards the Magnus Beckis and Chapel complex. Fran Lopez holding in front, and Ryan a little wide through Magnus. I think it's probably getting a little bit frustrated as they clout the curve through Beckis. Now through the right-hander at Chapel. Line says it's almost like a 20-wheel 650 GT3 as they come through the complex out onto the hangar straight. But I was going to go back to Rudy Van Buren very quickly, because the fact that, oh, that's a spin for Lee Morris up at the Stowe corner. Big spin for Lee Morris, big moment. Going to try and look back and see if we can see what happened. But so looks as though he went in too hot, chasing Chen Bullock Bashi, and lost the back end of the car. Spins it round, he looped it down to about, let's see, 12th position. So he's running pretty strongly in the top 10, and he's a pretty strong racer when the car works for him, Lee. But just getting away a little bit too much, that will simply frustrate him. One key thing on that is that when something like that happens, you can't let that incident just sit in your mind. You have to put it back in your mind and think, right, it's happened, let's carry on and try and see what we can make up.
Yeah, so Lee Morris then out of 8th position after a spin at Stowe Corner. He was battling with Martin Stefenko for 7th spot, and he is now ahead of Francisco Lopez, crucially. Lopez has got the position back from Kevin Ryan, but Kevin Ryan, clearly the faster man. Oh no, he's dropped behind that, so Morris is ahead of Lopez, and Ryan is still behind Lopez. Different grey car, I was getting confused. They're still fighting over the remaining positions. The best battle, in fact, is well out of the point scoring positions, well out of anything. And side by side between Lopez and Berjak, these two drivers very, very good. Berjak has the inside line, a bit of contact as they go through Luffield, opens the door for Kevin Ryan, who slots back through. Great racing between those guys, perhaps more touring cars than GT3, but the McLaren 650Ss still look like they're in one piece. There might be a little bit of an overlap here for Francisco Lopez to have another go at Cops Corner. It's not really a place you want to overtake, it's not really a place you want to go side by side. Lopez gets a slide, Ryan goes wide, again side by side, and for some reason Libert has a kind of a moment watching. I think he was getting rather excited with the two side by side.
Yeah, it was a bit of a sliding sympathy there for him in the mix as they turn their way up through the complex again. But Rudy Van Buren quick towards the front, who seems to be leading quite comfortably. He's got experience back to sort of 2008. He's done all sorts of Live for Speed. He's raced in some Masters of Endurance. He's done all sorts of race department championships. He's been Dutch champion in all sorts of different formulas in cars and touring cars and GTs. And he's currently racing in the GPWC Super League, and had a fantastic race actually on Thursday, where he was driving in the pouring rain at Spa and charging up and down the orders. So really he's a top driver in that championship, and certainly one to watch out for, as he's proving right now.
Battling going on between Nuno Pinto and Marta Stefanic, and a car parked on the side of the road as well. There's all sorts going on. I think we've lost one. It was Marta Stefanic who's off. He's out, and I think there may have been contact. Libert comes into the pits. I don't quite know why he's coming into the pits, as does Nuno Pinto. Maybe for a puncture perhaps, and it's a pit stop for him, but we have lost Martin Stefano.
It's Stefanko out of the pits. I suspect possibly there was contact between him and Stefanko. Didn't see the start of the incident. We saw the end of it where Stefanko's car was parked up, I suspect, down at the complex. That engine failure for Stefanko, that could be a result of the damage he's sustained as a result of the contact.
Yeah, so plenty of changing of positions now that Nuno Pinto went into the pits. Let's recap then the top positions. It is Rudy Van Buren who leads, Nikodem Wisniewski in second, Haniel Sabti in third, Graham Carroll in fourth, and Atsi Kirchhoff in fifth position. They are the people who qualify, and Cem Bulutbashi just fading slightly in sixth. Seems to have, well, he doesn't have anyone around him actually, does he? Look, there's a big gap in front of him, and he seems safe at least in that position, but he needs one more position to qualify into September. And just a quick shout out, we like shout outs. We'll get to your questions after the race, so keep talking to us on social media. But shout out to Lando Norris, who is a McLaren Works driver, who is watching live. Great to see you interested in this, Lando, and I'm afraid, I'm so sorry that you didn't qualify into the top 20. I know you tried to set a lap, but keep trying.
But he already has a job as a simulator driver,
Well,
so he's trying to take somebody else's. But that's an interesting factor, because Lando, I know he's a strong driver in iRacing as well. He does that a lot as they come through. Now, was there a change for... No, not just quite yet. So Carroll and sort of Kirkhoff battling with each other. But because Lando Norris uses iRacing to train, but of course I suppose he hasn't had too much time to kind of do too much running, because of course he has FIA European Formula 3 commitments of course to keep up with. But Lando Norris, of course, is certainly turning a good run so far. And actually, shout out to his performance back in Hungary at the test, was of course second quickest out there in the McLaren. A fantastic effort, and I think it's safe to say a lot of us are tipping him to potentially get to Formula 1. And I think personally to be the next British F1 World Champion.
He's certainly on his course to Formula 1, so for the moment he has the job at McLaren, so we can let somebody else fight for it. But Lando, great to have you with us, and I hope you're enjoying this racing action. It really is fantastic. But just a quick reference then, as we see this fantastic battle for second position. Nikodem Wisniewski is leading a 4-car train, not on the pace of Rudy Van Buren, who has sort of stretched his lead, but there are 3 drivers behind Wisniewski who desperately want that second position. Talking about real-world drivers who come into simulator driving, some of the older drivers perhaps don't see simulators quite so significant as some of the younger drivers, but we know, for instance, like Lando Norris, who uses this constantly to train, every opportunity to get some laps under his belt. The teams use simulators to tweak their cars, and someone like Max Verstappen, at any opportunity, will be on his simulator. If he's not on the kart track, and if he's not in a Formula 1 car, he's on a simulator. And we know that some other drivers, for instance, Cheeto Lopez, the Argentinian, he races in iRacing World Championships. He enters 24-hour races on his weekends off, much to his frustration from his girlfriend. But even when he's not Formula E-ing, World Touring Cars, or what else was he doing this year? WEC, he's on the simulator in his bedroom, racing what you're seeing now. And it'd be lovely to see someone like him, or Norbert Michelis is another driver from Hungary who comes through the sim racing background. So there is now, along with the Nissan GT Academy, which has been created to encourage that kind of thing, there are also drivers naturally progressing through ranks from sim racing into real world racing. But this is all about a sim racer being a sim racer for a Formula 1 team, and that is a very, very significant recognition of sim racing as a whole.
Yeah, it raised the profile of simulators, it raised the profile of esports, and it raises the profile in terms of, sim racing going forward as a medium for drivers to come through. And effectively, it's becoming a strong feeder series now to not only be in the mix there. Now, we've had, unfortunately, Morris is out of the race, I'm afraid to say. Morris out. What wasn't there at the place. He had a spin up at Stoke Corner earlier on, but not sure the reason why. Maybe just simply lost it off track, or doesn't say he had any mechanical problems, but unfortunately that's his race done, I'm afraid. So that will be him trying to get into, for Zandvoort next week. But just to finish my point very quickly, of course, the fact that esports is becoming more prominent, and I was mentioning the fact that esports is the only mix. Sim racing is the only medium of esports, in my personal opinion, that's proper real-world connotation. In terms of, you can be the best player of FIFA in the world, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to be able to, take free kicks and play like Messi or Ronaldo. Same as Call of Duty, you can get to sort of, top of team deathmatch, but if you give yourself, put yourself into that situation as an actual soldier, there's no guarantee, all due respect, that you'll be able to hold your own in that. But in, something like this championship, this contest here, you can run the lines, you can run a lap of Silverstone, and then do a track day at Silverstone, and pretty much use what you've learnt in the sim and actually practically apply it. And if I'm honest, I don't know too many more sims or games that actually allow you use what you've learnt in the sim and to have so much real-world connotation and relevance when you transfer it into doing the real thing.
Make sure you join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag WGGamer, I believe, and also have a look at how you might be able to qualify into this competition, because it's not just rFactor that this is the major for the next couple of weeks, but all the other types of sim racing are being recognised, and there is a chance to qualify into that top 12, top 13 that go through to the November finals, the interview stage at the McLaren Technology Centre. We're focusing on the rFactor 2 platform for the next couple of weeks. And if you do have rFactor 2, then make sure you try and qualify into next week's race. Just 20 positions, and there are over 1,000 people thirsty for the chance. These really are some of the top rFactor 2 gamers, but if you don't know too much about gaming, there are different platforms that you can race on, whether it be iRacing or Project Cars, or all sorts of different types of racing, or even on your mobile perhaps. Maybe you've got a mobile sim that you are super fast at. If you qualify through that, you can also be in with a chance to have an interview at the McLaren Technology Centre. So lots of different opportunities, but this is the one we're focusing on at the moment. 5 go through tonight into the September final, and at the moment those 5 are Ruud van Buren, Nikodem Wisniewski, Hani Al-Sabti, Graham Carroll and Atsi Kirchhoff.
Just been watching Nikodem Wisniewski whilst we've been talking. He's been a little bit ragged, a little bit oversteery first, but we've got a yellow flag in sector 2.
Yeah, it's Samuel Lubert again having another spin, I think.
Just getting himself back onto the road again as we come back through. Now, what's intriguing here, I'm just noticing here, Ben, is that this group of 4 that's battling for second place, it's just sort of broken away into 2 pairs now, because we've got both Wisniewski and Al-Sabti have just broken away from Carroll and Kirchhoff as they turn through a little sort of oversteer moment through the middle of maggots through the right-hander Alsabti, but he's really starting to put the pressure on Wisniewski as they come onto the back straight. We're just under 5 minutes to go now, so we had a pretty sort of straightforward race here in terms of these guys running line and stern for the most part, but I wonder possibly wait for the last 5 minutes to just these guys to wait to turn the wick up just a little bit more to see what they've got left in reserve. So this could be a point where it's make or break here in terms of literally one small move that you make here could either get you another place up in the top 5 or it could possibly spell disaster.
Yeah, so we're watching the battle for second position. Rudy Van Buren has a 4.6 second lead over this battle between Nikola Wisniewski and Hani Al-Sabti, and they are very, very close. Let's go on board then with Wisniewski. Let's see the kind of body language from that steering wheel. That is a real representation of what he'll be doing, whether it be in his bedroom, his front room, or perhaps he's got an office where he can play as well, or some teams have like a commune where you come and race together. But for the moment, the steering inputs look pretty good, don't they? Not a little bit, quite a lot of angle on the steering going through the tighter sections of the new loop, and now winding out onto the Wellington Straight, and all of that angle, that suggests to me as a real world racer that he's got a lot of understeer.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing is tyres any good either as they head back down towards the under brakes. And look at, you also can see, I think one with Al-Sabti actually in third place, how much these guys are moving under brakes when they're trying to get through. And some of them will be setting their brake bars back towards the rear, which I've learned is faster, but it makes the car very unsettled and very sort of twitchy under braking if you're trying to get through. It helps rotate the car through the corner, but it's expensive, make it very nervous under brakes and prone for the rear to snap around. So you've got to find that compromise in the setup, and so far Wisniewski's got the measure of him on this lap as you see a spit of flame. Slightly tighter run through Copse Corner, they run wide a little bit more, they go rough with the same amount off the track, just keeping track of what's going on between the two guys behind them, and it just goes up just a little bit, but it seems as though right now it's like a high-speed game of chess that motorsport is on track. Very much these guys are sort of almost checkmate because there's no movement between the four of them, no movement up and down in positions. And of course, again, we see Chen Bullock-Bashi in 6th position, sort of in no man's land. He's not catching the 4 cars in front, but he's not allowing Mohammed Patel behind in 8th position to close up in behind them either. So, sort of in the midst of things, sort of everything's looking pretty static, but it could all kick off in the next under 3 minutes.
Yeah, and thank you to Chen Bullock-Bashi for being very affable on Twitter this afternoon when we were trying to work out how to pronounce his Turkish name. Born in Istanbul, one of many different nationalities. He's the only Turkish driver. Well, I'm sure there was another one who was living in Turkey but wasn't actually born in Turkey. We have people from Doncaster and Coventry in the UK. We've got, we had Italy, we had Naples with Enzo Benito at the start of the race. The Netherlands, Poland, Iraq. It's absolutely amazing to see all of these different nations, and somewhere like Iraq, who doesn't really have a motorsport cultural heritage whatsoever. And there is Hani Al-Sabti in 3rd position, and you know, if he starts to create a culture, he can create a whole new world of motorsport in a country that is still kind of recovering, and it'd be an amazing thing to have an Iraqi flag on a podium somewhere, as we've seen with other drivers, especially in Central Europe, Serbians, Slovakians, starting to make their way in motorsport and introducing motorsport to a completely new audience. And every motorsport wants to be introduced to a new audience, and that's what we're doing here with the world's fastest gamer. We're introducing you guys as Formula 1 fans, as McLaren fans, maybe as sim fans already, into the world of sim racing, and showing that this is serious stuff. These guys are super, super talented, and they can be recognised by one of the world's best teams in Formula 1.
Yeah, and I think Hani Al-Sabti these days actually flies his craft living in the Netherlands, I believe, but of course he's originating from Baghdad, and he's certainly putting himself to the test to try and keep up with Wisniewski, himself is from Poland, and as they turn their way back through the exit of the complex through Chapel and onto the back straight once again underneath the bridge on Hanger Straight, I wonder possibly if Al-Sabti, well, they're going to come onto the last lap now, just to come through with Van Buren way in the lead by just over 5 seconds. And I wonder possibly Wisniewski's got the measure here, but Al-Sabti is giving it everything he can. He's as close as he's ever been now in 3rd position. And I wonder then possibly, this is giving the last opportunity here onto the last lap. Al-Sabti possibly has been saving us up possibly for the last lap. He's kept it a lot of curve into the first part of Farm, and then into Club. Double apex right-hander onto the last lap, Rudy Van Buren, but 2nd place is on. The final tour of the Grand Prix circuit is about to begin. Now, possibly lining up a move for 2nd place if he can find an avenue through.
Will we see any changes in these top 5? They're all qualified into the final in September. All of those guys, if they stay at the top 5, will go through So it really is now for pride, and Al Sabti dives very, very deep into the hairpin in the loop, but just about manages to keep his front bumper off the rear of Wisniewski's exhaust that's flaming in his eyes. That's one of the great things about these McLaren, the 650S GT3 car that they're using today. Those flames puffing every time they down change and on the brakes. Just behind Al Sabti is Graham Carroll and Atsi Kirchhoff, and those two are also locked as well together. So this really is pride. That's all it is, because they're all going to get through into September. They'll all then start working on their national setup. And don't forget, Rudy Van Buren ahead by 5.5 seconds and looking in super, super comfortable. Let's see what happens through Copse and Beckett's with this battle for second. Big slide from Wisniewski, much cleaner from Al Sabti through Copse, but he's not going to be quite quick enough. The last place we're going to see a pass is basically in Stone. If they're not close enough in Stone, then they're not going to do anything into Vale. That'd be silly. But there is a chance that anything can happen between these second, third, fourth and fifth place drivers. As it for Rudy Van Buren, he's sorted, he's happy, he's going to take a very comfortable victory that basically was established thanks to Superpole.
It was. He put in a fantastic effort in qualifying, and he's managed to put himself in front. And of course, he's done his team proud. Of course, he's representing the Vodpool team that he's part of into the complex at Vale Club for the final time. It's been a superb effort, and I think that he's rightfully earned his spot in the top 5. A fantastic drive and rightfully deserved.
Here comes Rudy Van Buren then across the line to take the checkered flag, and he is the first victor of the world's fastest gamer rFactor 2 round 1 qualifier. Nico Wisniewski holds on to second with Hani Al Sabti in third and Graham Carroll fourth, Atsi Kirchhoff in fifth, and they are our 5 qualifiers that will go through into the final in September. Wonderful, wonderful race. Work to do for the rest of the field until next week. If they choose to enter, they don't have to choose to enter, but I'm sure we'll see the rest of the 15 guys that didn't go through at the top of the field next week when we race at Zandvoort. But Rudy Van Buren from the very beginning held control. A little bit chaotic through the first couple of corners. It all settled down, and then from there it was about being consistent, and that's one of the things that McLaren guys will be looking out for. They want consistency, and the lap time, bang, bang, bang. Not a mistake from Rudy Van Buren. And the Netherlands driver, the Dutch driver, fantastic actually afternoon, evening for the Dutch, because Van Buren Dutch in first, Atsi Kirchhoff in fifth also from the Netherlands. So very, very good, and as we mentioned also, Hani Al Sabti based in the Netherlands. So yeah, good evening for the Dutch and the Orange. We've got more celebrity Dutch drivers then.
And the key thing is, of course, effectively, I mean, they can time trial it, but they won't need to race it, because they won't be allowed to race it because they're already through. But of course, what's the next circuit? Zandvoort, home circuit. So yeah, effectively, it's all working for the Dutch now. First, third and fourth. First honorary third, shall we say, and fifth position for the Dutch. And of course, it's then probably their biggest and best circuit that they have in the country coming up next. So it looks as though that Bolut Bashi, Patel, Keithley, Ryan Bellack, and everyone else, effectively, they're going to have to try again next week, because of course this is going to be pretty crucial for them to get through. And I've already seen some of the guys already, even the time trial already is open for Zandvoort. So if you want to get involved with that, and of course then do so, grab the McLaren 650S GT3, grab yourself rFactor 2, get yourself signed up and get yourself onto the sim, get the time trials going, get your setups working and get yourself on there, because potentially we could be talking about you next week sitting right here at Silverstone whilst you're racing on the virtual portion of Zandvoort, and potentially you could get yourself into the top 5 and join these guys who have just finished a fantastic race into the final race in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, fantastic stuff. The qualifiers then for the first round of the world's fastest gamer rFactor 2 qualifying. Rudy Van Buren, Nikodem Wisniewski, Hani Al Sabti, Graham Carroll and Atsi Kirchhoff are the top 5. Work to do for the rest, and we'll see them next week on the Zandvoort circuit.
And there it is. It had it all. Speed, consistency, close racing, and a fair few bit of drama. But as Ben just mentioned, after that incredible race, our 5 qualifiers for the 4 weeks' time final shootout to make it into the race week. Atsi Kirchhoff, Graham Carroll, who much improved after the E-race presence that he had obviously earlier in the year and a bit of a poor showing in qualifying, steps up to 4th. Al Sabti, same thing, bit of a rough qualifying for him, finds his way onto the podium, in fact, so we'll hear from him in a moment in 3rd. Wisniewski finishes in 2nd, and Rudy Van Buren, I have to say, is a machine, Ben. Mr. Consistency, as not only in the one-lap Superpole did he show great form, he walked away almost 3 seconds, 4 seconds by the end, I think, was his gap.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a surprise because some of the guys who were really up the top end, like Enzo Benito, out after one corner, he's going to be very, very frustrated. And we know the Italian kind of flair.
Passion.
And passion is going to be a little bit, there's going to be arms flying around. And then he's going to settle himself, get that qualifying banged in for next week and for Zandvoort, and then he's going to go again. And we'll see him at the top of the field.
Well, and I should mention as well, and we will see him, and we'll come back to Benito, because I think there's some issues maybe technically that went on there. It was a bit of a peculiar exit from him. Not to mention Ballista as well. There's some drama there we need to speak of. But I should mention, not only have these 5 qualified, that's the main thing. That's what this is about. These guys want to get the final job. Keep in mind that Logitech and Sparco, sponsors of the entire event, are also adding prizes for each of these qualifying races. That said, we've got our 3rd place finisher. Sabti is sitting by in TeamSpeak. Listen, Henny, you had a bit of a rough qualifying in the Super Pole. In fact, a little bit further back than what our pundits perhaps expected of you. But you pulled it together in the race when it mattered.
Yeah, the qualifying setup wasn't there really, and the focus also. So, but I was glad that I made it in the Super Bowl, and it eventually didn't matter where I ended up.
Start drama, obviously. Ballesta made things a little bit interesting for everyone. You know, talk about pressure. Doing a rolling start at a simulator as well. Did that add any sort of sensory overload for you on the start, or did you just handle it as it was presented?
It was really, really difficult because I knew Enzo next to me, he had damage, so I didn't know what would happen in T1, and everyone was bunched up, so it was really tricky, and yeah, it went well.
And in that second half of the race, attention from in front of you, attention from behind, was there any thoughts about perhaps going for a second spot, or you were happy to settle for 3rd?
No, I never settled for 3rd. I was always pushing, and I knew the guy in front of me, his tires were done and the second half of the race, and I had the pace to follow the leader, which had really good pace. And the guys behind me, I think they stayed there because they were 4th or 5th is enough to go to the next round.
Yeah.
And there was a gap to 6th as well, and I was mentioning that with about 3 laps left. We were looking at it, and I said, don't move. There's no need. You guys have made it to the next stage in 4 weeks' time, which is an incredible achievement for you. And first off, congratulations. You talked a little bit about setup. These cars have only been in for 2 weeks. Looking down the line, if you were to sort of be in a position for the sim racing, it doesn't really matter. You've got to be able to sit in a car and go fast. How much setup did you actually take the time to put into this car, and how much was just driver instinct from you?
Well, setup in this car is really important, and the guy who finds the best settings will go fast. Of course, talent is a big factor. You need to have the talent to be in the top 20, but the setup will help you to find the last 2/10. And yeah, having it as an open setup, it was really tricky. And as a team, if you have a team, it's easier to set up the car because more guys will find different things.
Well,
unfortunately, I did it all by myself, so I'm happy. I'm happy with the final result.
Perhaps something in that, doing it by yourself, perhaps that speaks to your skill and your technical ability without aid. But you mentioned a good point. You are part of a team, and that's what this is all about for McLaren as well. You have to provide input for a much bigger team in that sense. So congratulations, Hanny. Phenomenal performance. Congratulations on making it through in 4 weeks' time. Get practicing, keep rolling, and be ready when we get into that final race to try and make it through to race week.
Thank you.
Great race from him, I have to say. And I like what he said because as a racer, look, it's hard not to push. You never want to not go for a victory, but hold station. You were in the top 5. That has to be the objective. You know, at this point, it's about getting through to giving yourself a chance to go further.
Hey, we're all sitting here thinking and saying exactly the same thing. Just don't do anything. Don't dive down the inside. Races are racers. Every gap's a goal, and they want to go for the best possible position and get that one up on their competitor for next time. Because of course, those 5 guys have qualified. They'll race against each other in a couple of weeks' time on that super tight circuit, the Silverstone National Circuit with 3.5 corners.
That's right.
They need to kind of mentally psych the other one out and try to make sure that they make mistakes, because the only way you get past, I was telling you this morning, I've raced on that in real world in a Mini, the only way you can get past is by the other people making mistakes in front of you.
Well, and just to speak on that really quickly before we jump into our next interview with Wisniewski, who's joining in just momentarily, but one of the things to speak about consistency, at the start, you could fit probably all 20 cars, or I think about 18 after Balesta and Benito had their issues. You could put about all 18 cars on the Wellington straight. By the end, we started to see some of the dramas unfold, whether it was contact. I know Lopez and Ryan had a few moments, but there was some separation, and consistency is a huge factor.
Absolutely, and as I was saying in commentary, consistency is exactly what McLaren will be looking for. They want somebody who can bang out 200-300 laps in their simulator, change little setups, feel what that's done to the car, make comment on it, and then go back and you know, McLaren effectively do their testing on the simulator. They put a new front wing on the car with different downforce settings and go, right, go and do 5 laps, tell me what it does to tyres, go and do 5 laps, tell me what it does to balance, and give us feedback. And so if you can't bang out the exact same lap exactly in terms of where you put the car on the track, how you turn and rotate the car in each individual turn and corner, then the consistency in the overlay between one lap with the new front wing and the other lap without it is all confused. So you desperately need to have consistency. It's most crucial. And that's what all of these professional drivers have, both in the real world and we're seeing in the sim world as well.
Well, absolutely, and more to that in a little later. Talking to Jenson Button, he had some interesting points about how that program regime runs side by side with the real car, and they rely on that data. One of the members who might be providing that data, who's just got himself onto the podium and qualified through as well, Wisniewski, great race from you. I have to say, after qualifying, I wasn't sure what to expect from your positioning, but you pulled it off.
Yeah, it was like crazy race with Hani behind me. I couldn't do any mistake for all race. Yeah, Rudy's pace was absolutely crazy. I couldn't catch him, so yeah, big kudos for him because he did a great job. And speaking about quali, yeah, my goal was to be on the Super Bowl in top 5. So yeah, that was quite nice. And after that, and the 3rd position for the start was quite good, especially that somebody received a penalty. So yeah, 2nd place is really good. I couldn't imagine that I will be 2nd on the grid for that race.
Yeah, clean, nice, open picture view into Abbey, first corner. That takes some pressure off, but a good point as well about the pressure from Henny. We saw Van Buren kind of pull away, but how much driving out of the mirrors and how much focus did you have to tell yourself to, you know, look forward, keep it going, hit your marks, be consistent? How hard was that over a 15, 16 lap race with him right behind you?
Yeah, I try to tell myself that I need to, you know, look forward, look on the track, not look behind on the mirrors, and it was quite hard because he was absolutely quick. Almost we have a similar pace, so any mistake could, you know, just get me to on the 3rd or 4th position. So yeah, that was absolutely tough race for me, and I'm sweating as hell.
Hani was saying that he reckoned your tyres had gone off after the last couple of laps. Were you really struggling by the end with grip? He reckoned he could have passed you, but not necessarily take the risk.
Not really, because I have an issue with my pedals. So I just tried to not, you know, kicking my brake pedal because it's not working okay. So you know, I have like 100% of the brake, and then I have 0, like if I'm kicked too hard. So yeah, that was you know, really tough part of that race. But yeah, luckily I'm on the finish line on the 2nd place.
Obviously, we've got you on TeamSpeak, so we can't see you, but just give us a visual idea of where you are this evening, where you've competed in this race. And you said you've got a problem with your pedals. Are you wearing socks? Are you wearing race boots? Give us an idea of where you are tonight.
Yeah, I'm wearing socks actually, and yeah, it's just normal room with desk with a big screen, and wheel mounted on the desk. So
in your bedroom or in the front room or?
No, it's one of the big room with the kitchen light. So
kitchen light. That's all you need, right?
Private, Ben. He doesn't want to let us in on that. Well, listen, great race. Congratulations. I did want to ask about setup because I know I've streamed some sim racing and everyone asks me, why do I wear gloves? I get extremely clammy, so it's interesting about what different drivers do in their comforts.
Your clamminess.
Well, there we go. Back at me. But thank you very much for joining us, Wisniewski. Congratulations. We'll see you in 4 weeks' time, and best of luck. You seem to certainly have some pace that is consistent, and the reason I said in qualifying that I wasn't sure is your inputs look so aggressive. I thought tires would be an issue, but apparently not. Apparently you've got something, so well done.
Yeah, that's my style of driving. Sorry.
No worries. Thanks very much. So, yeah, it is interesting to talk about setup because, you know, I do wear full-on my Nomex gloves that I actually wear in my car at times.
Because there is a potential that the steering wheel might catch a light.
That's right.
You're using it so much.
Listen, I've got to be prepared for the worst, okay? I have bad luck with technology at times, but you know, I do get sweaty, and some guys prefer to have grip at all times, and you know, he just said his pedals were down, he's got pressure on them. I imagine if that was me, I would have been dripping by the end of that race.
Yeah, I used to have a problem with my pedals sliding away from me every time you put the accelerator.
Yeah,
exactly.
I put a board down for that reason.
You have to have so much thinking and setup. The one thing that differs from a real car to obviously the sim racing world is in a real car you're in that enclosed environment, you're in your fireproofs, you're in 2 or 3 layers worth. Even on a cold day, if you're in an enclosed cockpit, the car's going to be 40 odd degrees, and that adds to the pressure and that adds to that kind of sweaty environment. But the concentration that these guys are having to focus on, that's kind of, it's psychological pressure. It's not psychological. It's not physical heat. It's kind of psychological heat, and so that's where that stress and that sweat.
Well, I find the most exhaustion in put it this way, from karting as a child to sim racing now in my older life. I find I'm every bit as tired from sim racing as I was in a day of karting, because in a lot of times, it is that mental focus. Yeah. It's so draining, especially in close quarters like this. Yeah. Close quarters for our second to
everyone
fifth place. But Rudy Van Buren, you're a machine. Drove away. Looked super pole. You looked smooth as could be. Very wide line on Stowe, but carried through. It was completely clean and legal. And then you walked away in the race. Beautifully done from you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this was an example race how you actually want them. Qualification went well, a bit unexpected pole. The race I could just drive away, nip away those little 10s each lap and get the gap. Funny actually you mentioned Stowe. We asked about it prior to race as well, and they said it's allowed for this one. I guess they'll change it for the finale, but it was all good. Good race, very happy.
Yeah.
Rudy, you qualified in the time trial only in 13th position, so 12 competitors ahead of you. Okay, the gaps were tiny, only 0.2 of a second. What did you do from then until today to find that extra speed? Because you look to be in a class of your own.
Well, in the pre-qualification, I just didn't have the time to actually put in all the laps. I was actually happy to be in the top 20, and I knew that if I would make that step, I could prepare myself a bit better for the race. That's how it went. I was really lucky to get into the top 20 with the amount of laps I did. And now I could just get my race practice in, get a bit of better quali practice, improve the times quite a lot, and just do the race.
So did you find that it was today where you made the bulk of your time just actually being able to focus? Because presumably, you know, all these guys, you've all got real life jobs, you've all got other things to focus on. You're not sitting on your computer the whole time doing laps. Maybe some guys are, but it doesn't sound like you were.
No, exactly. I've actually switched jobs 2 weeks ago, so that makes things a bit more difficult. That you don't have all the time available that you used to have. I put in not even 200 laps in the qualification and made it. So I probably doubled that for the race, just for this one. But
that's a good talking point as well, because talking to Alsabti, he was saying, you know, he put in a lot of time, and you know, the car's only been in the game for 2 weeks. Talking about setup, he did it all himself. How much setup did you get from yourself, and how much input did you have potentially from teammates, and time did you have to prepare in that regard?
No, we at Voltpool Motorsport got a good bunch of guys, and we actually tested a bit together, and I got to thank them for that. I had very minimal input in this one and getting it dialed in. It's just like the final bits to getting it dialed to your personal preference, but with the time available and so on. And like I said, I switched the job. I needed to count on them.
Yeah.
Put into perspective what this competition means to a driver like yourself. Backed by McLaren, the opportunity to work for a Formula One team as a sim racer, and the recognition of what it means to be a sim racer. How important is it for you and for the world of sim racing?
Very important. This could be like the life-changing moment, but it's not the finale. It's one step into the right direction. We got to do it in the finale, but this is mega. The whole thing that McLaren creates for the whole sim racing world is better than we've ever seen before. That many viewers, the way the stream looks, the way the whole surrounding, and you guys are doing it, it's mega. It's taking it to another level.
Well, we couldn't do it without the skill and the driving that you guys provided, and perhaps your turn now to turn it around and help your teammates get through to the next stages. I love your mentality. I love that you say this is just one step, because it's a very long contest. Listen, congratulations. That's a beautiful drive, and hopefully you can replicate that in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
Yeah, we'll go for it. Thank you guys for everything.
Well, that was quite good. I think we should get Miguel to join us as well as Scott.
Yeah, Scott,
Maybe bring everyone back on board for a bit of time and chat, because we've all had input in this. Miguel, I know you had your hands full sort of doing the race stewarding with Ed. There was quite a bit of action going on in the midfield. Scott, alongside Ben, you settle. Let's start from the beginning, okay? We have to. Ballesta. You said even in the Super Pole you were kind of underwhelmed. You expected a little more from him. He's been a GT Academy driver. Pressure shouldn't be something that gets to him. There was a driver's briefing. You can talk more on that. He knew the rules for the start, and yet he jumped them and then kind of made a mess of it.
Yeah, basically, it can happen sometimes under this pressure. He was quite quick. He qualified right, and he thought probably.
That's the jump there, by the way. So
it's a jump and a wallop, isn't it?
It's a jump. So well, and it leads to another point. I just not to cut you off too much, Miguel. I want to talk about this because obviously the sim grids you up standing start. You guys took that as a chance to do a formation and then called green from race control. He was explained that.
Yeah, everything was explained on driver's briefing.
I wasn't listening to driver's briefing clearly because I went for the start, didn't I?
Yeah. Even it was talked about on Super Pole. After you finish, you do the drive the rest
cool down lap.
Exactly, and then probably after that he was a bit nervous and everything adds on, and then that happened. I don't know. He might get his foot stuck on the throttle as the race started as well. And that could have happened. I don't know, but. It's a bit unfortunate. I think he's very fast. He's very capable. I wish him better luck for the next race if he wants to try it. It's just we want to keep this as professional as possible.
The thing is, he had kind of half dropped down the field, hadn't he? He wasn't fully at the back, but he had let some guys pass, which was kind of a strange situation. He obviously knew what he needed to do.
So, well, just to quickly, because 3's a charm, you're right, which that ultimately led to the DQ, is him not starting at the back. So, first, not the cooldown lap.
Oh, that's
but
Benito,
this is where it wants to lead to. So, this is what I was going to talk about, because when he did the jump start, he made contact with Benito. Suspension damage, potentially, handling issues, or was it a tech issue on his part? At first, when I saw it, I thought, okay, tech issue. I went, that's got to be something wrong with his steering wheel at home, some sort of computer malfunction. After seeing the replay of Ballesta off the start, smoke Benito, I'm thinking, is it suspension damage? Is that actually caused by Ballesta?
We missed that. Of course, we missed a couple of things, but we missed that.
To be fair, I was in the race control room, so I had that replay a few more times than you did.
That's a fair point. That's very key in terms of Ballesta, just that little bit of misjudgment. As we said, all due respect, I think we expected a bit more of him. The fact that he's been in that pressure environment in GT Academy in the Spanish sort of national races, and he comes to this event and he has. You can call it really a nightmare, to be fair, because of course he jumped the start, then he was told 3 times to try and move back down the order, and he did so, but only halfway, and halfway is not good enough. As a case of either you go down all the way or you suffer the consequences, and sadly, unfortunately, he suffered the consequences, and hopefully he'll learn for next time.
But affecting Benito's race and seeing Benito not even turn to the first corner, he obviously knew there was something wrong, and that was it. It was off of the first corner, and press escape and out the race.
Yeah, which tells me that it was obviously, that's why if he misses the corner and rejoins at the back, he's a fast enough driver. Okay, yes, they're all close, they're all consistent. It's tough to overtake at times, but you'd expect him to give it a go. You can't throw this away. So that's why I thought absolutely it was an issue of some form. And again, seeing that replay, bit of a shocker. Again, GT Academy driver takes out the driver who was fastest in qualifying of the 2,000 drivers to get into this. Fastest in qualifying leading into the Super Pole. Okay, small mistake puts him further on the grid, which ultimately led to his demise by no fault of his own. A little bit further back, okay, this is when we got into the thick of it. Ryan and Lopez heading into, I believe this was into the loop by the time we get up there. Okay, so, yeah, actually going in toward the backside complex, Maggots, Beckett's. Contact between the two of them. There was actually one earlier than that where Ryan was forced to give back the position, and when they rejoined, they just had an ongoing battle that I think kind of elevated a little too far.
Yeah, because the first spin was in the loop.
That's right. That's the one I thought we were going to see there. So that was the second contact between them.
They obviously have a little bit of a rivalry going, and they're going to come back next week at Zamba, and we're going to. And
there we go. There's the first contact.
And he's not. I mean, from a driver's standards perspective. What do we think of that? He was kind of half making a move. He was lining him up through the previous corner as well. So you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, well, he was quite close, but still it was quite dangerous. They had quite a very good battle. It makes things a bit more interesting as well. Everybody likes a bit of an overtake, but I think overall in the race it was pretty good race. I think everybody behaved quite well. If you consider there's 20 cars on track, and then you always have situations like this as well. And they are trying. They are going for the win, all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and interestingly, coincidentally, the first contact was lap 7. By the time the penalty had been issued lap 8, but they rejoined it lap 9. Burlack actually, I think, benefited from it because they made contact. I don't ask me where in the track. I think it was maybe at Stowe, and he jumped down the inside of both of them and said, "Thanks very much, boys. I'm off."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he wasn't in the top 5. It wasn't that much of a change. But again, these are all guys that are going to come back next week. They'll all have that on their memory and be a little aware of sort of their surroundings.
You mentioned Burlack though, Scott. You were mentioning in commentary. It's a surprise to see him in the second half of the field, right?
Yeah, it was, because effectively he was up there. He was one of the guys that was lapping in that sort of bracket of times. It was quicker than Enzo Benito's 157.004. I mean, quickest time I saw in the practice sessions, at least, before we got to qualifying, was a 156.7, I think. So the pace was there for those guys, and he was one of those top drivers. And he's a guy who's also been, he was 4th best, or came 4th in the Vegas E-race. So he's not a slow sim racer by the margin. He wouldn't be in the competition if he was. But the fact he was that way down the order, it really was a shock. And also, I think Jack Keithley was way down there as well. And these are guys who are good sim racing all-rounders that can race in all sorts of different cars, whether it's touring cars, Grand Prix cars, single-seaters, even in Jack Keithley's case, NASCARs. He's been successful in those sims. So the fact they're way down the order means possibly, I don't know, maybe they got caught up too much in the early laps and the pace faded away, and maybe it's a case for them to come back to Zandvoort and try again. And Zandvoort's a tricky circuit because it's a circuit where what's crucial is that Silverstone's a flat circuit. Zandvoort is far from a flat circuit. It's cuts amongst the sand dunes, of course, by the coast. So it should be a fantastic circuit. I've been there in real life, and it's a fascinating circuit to go, and it's a fascinating circuit to drive on the sim. So that's going to be a real test for the drivers.
Cool.
Yeah. Before we jump into some of the positive notes, because there are a few that we have to talk about who made up the order, we got to focus on the drama. Lee Morris, lap 9, bit of a spin for him as well. This cost him dearly, as he was looking actually to make pace. I think he closed the gap just before this.
He's kind of intimidated off the racing line, isn't he? He's being challenged from behind. He's completely offline. And it is, like the real world, dirty offline than it is online, and lost the rear there.
I know Lee, effectively, he will be absolutely kicking himself for that, because he was one of the guys who said that this was actually one of the biggest sim races, not the biggest sim race of his life. And to be fair, he was up to about P6, P7. Yeah. He was doing a fantastic job. He only had to watch for a couple of the guys to make a mistake. He could have been in the top 5. And I think if he qualifies again for Zandvoort, depending on who's quick there, he may be one to watch. He's not going to be one that's going to give up on that.
Well, overall, again, dramas were there, but there was some very good talking points. One of them I have to focus on that stood out to me. Made it through to the qualifier, 4th position. Graham Carroll looked a little lost in qualifying for a guy who's been at the Vegas E-race, who's been around in numerous sim championships for a while. It's a name that I've known for a while in sim racing, and I haven't even been involved for the past few years just due to my life. But he made things up. He definitely did. And to be in the train of 4 cars, finishing 4th overall, and making it through, that's a big improvement from where he was at the start of this.
Yeah, I think the key thing was that those from second down to 5th position in that group, they were a long way ahead of Jem Bulutbashi. And that kind of represented a difference in class between those front 5. And then Jem had the opportunity, because he was on his own. He wasn't, certainly in the second half of the race, being challenged. The kind of that group broke apart. But he wasn't able to make up any ground. So it will be interesting to see how he addresses next week, because obviously take away those front 5 because they've qualified, and he is now effectively the favourite to go through next week if he can find a decent setup for Zandvoort. So fingers crossed for him, fingers crossed for every single person out there who wants to get involved. Obviously we had over 2,000 applicants, 1,200 actually set a lap time, and you can be one of those people next week being talked about on the sofa with us, the McLaren sitting there, and qualifying to be one of the world's fastest gamers.
All right, I've got to go back to that, because you mentioned him being as one of the favourites now, effectively removing, but there's 2 others that will be back, Benito and Ballesta. Yeah. GT Academy from Ballesta, you went through that program. Are you a bit surprised that a guy that's been through that sort of pedigree in sim racing had that result, and do you expect him to rebound?
Well, I think he's quite capable. When we did GT Academy, he was second in the world or to qualify that year. So the speed is there. What happened today, I'm not sure. Only he can answer that. But probably a bit nervous. But I think he can for sure fight back. And I think he'll be one of the contestants for the win on the next race.
Absolutely, and I just want to touch too. You kind of, I think, stole my notes at some point in there. You got Norbert Michelis in there. You had Lopez. I was going to talk about some of this aspect because some of those guys, just to touch on the team aspect. Interesting that Al-Sabti was saying he did it all himself because a lot of these guys work with guys like Max Verstappen, Jose Maria Lopez, who, not what you'd think. These sim racers aren't going to them for help. Oftentimes, it's those guys coming to the sim world to learn lines and maybe not directly translated to F1, but in the sim world, set up cues from them.
Well, Graham Carroll, on the lead up to the Formula E competition, was visiting Sam Bird's house weekly to give Sam Bird tips on the Vegas E-race, because obviously there was quite a nice little prize packet for them. So Graham was the teacher to the DS Virgin guys. I'm not sure he visited Pachito so much, because Pachito's in Geneva, and he's also considers himself pretty top-end sim racer. But Sam probably put his hands up and said, look, I didn't do very much of this. Sam's a little bit before this generation, so he missed it being crucial. He was doing karting and actually missed a lot of karting through school. So he needed some guidance. And we've seen some of the guys racing this evening are already sim racers for some of the Formula E teams and other teams as well.
Yeah, and also one thing I want to point out as well is there is also someone who is a keen sim racer who's quite familiar with that car over there, and that's a certain Stoffel Vandal. I know he's been somebody who's charged through and actually was sim racing during his lower days in Formula Renault Euro Cup and even Formula Renault 3.5, and guys like Jack Keighley actually raced against Stoffel Vandal, and of course he's been someone who has come up the ranks. And if Stoffel can come up and now become a McLaren Formula 1 driver, then there's no telling what all of our sim racers here could do.
And there's another one in the McLaren system who just had an excellent test recently in the
we gave him a shout out.
He was he's been in a lot of the videos in the lead up to this. He's the one you see in the technology center with all the cars lined up, and then the sim rig at the front. Lando Norris, who's been a front runner in sim racing for years as well.
Again, I'll say it again, he's my tip to become the next British world champion in Formula 1, I think, because the pace he showed and the confidence he showed in that Hungary test was absolutely superb. He's having a fantastic campaign. I think he's second in the FIA European Formula 3 Championship. He's on the verge of possibly winning the title, and I've no doubt within the next sort of few years he'll be in McLaren, or at least in Formula 1, he'll be challenging, I'm sure, for the world title.
And the reason he's recognised by McLaren is because, much like Lewis Hamilton, he's been showing epic pedigree since he was in karts. He won the World Championship in karting the same year as he competed in, I think, Ginetta Juniors, where he won that. He then progressed into Formula 4 and he won that. And one of the things that makes a super driver is a driver who can jump into a championship, learn that car and win the championship in its first year. And he's done that in, I think, 3 or 4 championships already. And so to bang in to a McLaren from this year, so absolutely no chance to practice that. It's a brand new car for 2017. He has driven previous versions, so the 16 and 15, but more downforce than ever, more grip than ever. He's a tiny little guy. And then to go second fastest over the test in Formula 1, he is a star, and great to have him on the stream. He might be in bed by now, but Lando, cool to have you on board.
Well, we're searching for lots of stars, and we've got our first few from this. The 5 guys that have gone through have looked very impressive. I have to give a shout out just before we finish this segment. Rudy Van Buren looked absolutely incredible. Hopefully he can continue that form, because that's the level of consistency, smooth driving that they're going to be looking for to help McLaren out. We're not done quite yet. We'll be back in a second, but first, check out this game-changing stuff. Well, there is lots of different ways to qualify for the world's fastest gamer. While we're doing rFactor, there's another way you can get involved. The qualifiers for that particular game is available, Gear Club, on your phone until August 17th. That's when those qualifiers close, so you can still get involved. There's lots of ways to get involved in this. It's been an excellent first week, I have to say. A brilliant time here at Silverstone. And while we remain here physically, the virtual world heads off to the sunny seaside resort of Zandvoort, and we continue the action. It's a much different circuit. We've got adulation, camber. The inputs will matter. Locking tires and wheels will be far more common, I have to say. And I expect we will have every bit as good of a competition as we had this week. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in 1 week's time for week 2.